My name's Caitlin Walsh, 30 years old, and I never thought my family would turn a celebration into a public humiliation. It was my mom's birthday party, a night I'd spent weeks planning. 30 guests filled the room, laughing, clinking glasses. Then my dad stood up, pointed at me, and bellowed, "Pay $2,000 rent or get out and never come back." His words hit like a slap, echoing in front of everyone. My brother smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Good luck with that little sister," he sneered loud enough for all to hear. The room went silent. My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch. I grabbed my purse, walked out, and drove straight to the house I'd secretly bought months ago. That night, I made a choice not just to leave, but to cut every tie, every shared bill, every trace of them from my life. What they didn't know was I'd already been piecing together their lies, secrets about money, about my future, about who they really were. I wasn't just walking away, I was ready to fight back. And trust me, they'd regret pushing me out. Have you ever had to walk away from family to find your own peace? Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey. You won't believe what I uncovered next. The restaurant buzzed with chatter when everything fell apart. I'd poured my heart into planning my mom's birthday party, calling the venue for weeks, picking out lilies and candles for the tables, paying the deposit from my own savings. The place glowed with elegance, soft light flickering across polished silverware, but the air crackled with tension I couldn't name. I stood by the entrance greeting guests with a tight smile, juggling vendor calls while they streamed in their voices loud with excitement. My parents didn't see me. They were too busy fawning over my brother, the star engineer, their pride and joy. "He's making us so proud," my dad said, his hand on Scott's shoulder as I checked the seating chart for the 10th time. I'd handled every detail, menu, decorations, even the playlist, but no one noticed. Guests swirled around, clinking glasses, laughing, but most didn't know who I was. "Are you the event planner?" one man asked, glancing at my clipboard. I shook my head, forcing a laugh. Another guest called me Katie and walked away. They seated me at the far end of the table by the exit as if I were an extra in their show. My mom opened her gifts, gushing over Scott's lavish presents, while my hand-picked card sat untouched in a pile. I gripped my fork, feeling like a ghost in my own family. The night dragged on the room, growing louder, my presence smaller. I caught my dad's eye, hoping for a nod, a "thank you, anything." He looked through me, turning to praise Scott's latest project. My mom giggled at Scott's jokes, her attention glued to him. I was the one who'd made this night happen, but I might as well have been invisible. Every smile I forced felt heavier, every laugh from the crowd sharper. I rearranged napkins, checked with the chef, kept the event running smoothly, yet no one said my name. A server bumped into me, mumbling, "Sorry, didn't see you there." I nodded, used to it. Then my dad stood, his face-flushed voice cutting through the noise. "You live under our roof. You pay $2,000 rent or get out." He barked, jabbing a finger at me. The room froze, glasses clinking to a stop. Guests stared, some whispering, others gaping. Scott leaned back in his chair, a smirk curling his lips. "Good luck with that, little sister," he said, his voice loud, mocking, slicing through the silence. My chest tightened, heat rising to my face. Every eye was on me, waiting for me to crumble. I didn't. I set my napkin down, picked up my coat, and walked toward the door. My mom's gaze flicked to me, then away, as if I were a stranger. No one called me back. I stepped into the cool night air, my heels clicking on the pavement. My car was parked across the lot, keys already in hand. I didn't hesitate. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the restaurant. The lights faded in my rearview mirror, along with the family I'd tried so hard to please. I wasn't going back to their house, their rules, their indifference. I'd bought a place of my own months ago, a secret I'd kept to protect myself. As I drove, my hands steady on the wheel, I knew this wasn't just about leaving a party. It was about leaving them behind for good. 2 days after the party, I settled into the house I'd been preparing for months. I'd moved most of my things weeks ago, bit by bit, so my parents wouldn't notice. That night, after walking out of the restaurant, I'd driven back to their house one last time, grabbed my final box of books and clothes, and left their key on the counter. Now, sitting on my own couch surrounded by unpacked boxes, I felt a strange mix of relief and ache. The silence of my new place was mine, but the sting of their words, Dad's demand, Scott's mockery, clung to me. I sipped coffee, staring at the bare walls, and let my mind wander to the years I'd spent trying to belong in a family that never truly saw me. My dad and mom always put Scott first. When he turned 16, they parked a brand new car in the driveway, complete with a giant red bow. My 16th birthday came with a card and $10 handed over without a glance. They'd cheer at Scott's soccer games, hang his report cards on the fridge, while my straight A's got a nod, if that. Family dinners revolved around his stories, his latest project, his big plans. I'd sit there stirring my food, waiting for a chance to speak that rarely came. They made it clear Scott was the star, and I was just there. It wasn't just the big gestures. They'd overlook my moments, like when I won a math competition in high school. I stood alone at the awards ceremony, scanning the crowd for faces that never showed. That same week, they threw a party for Scott's new job, complete with a toast from Dad. At a cousin's wedding, someone asked, "Who's Caitlin?" Mom laughed. "Oh, she's just around waving me off." They'd call me Kate or Casey, chuckling when I corrected them, as if my name didn't matter. Scott, though, was always our Scott, their pride, their focus. I'd tried to earn their approval. I paid their phone bill. Their electricity, even chipped in for their groceries, hoping it would make me matter. It didn't. They'd praise Scott for a new couch, assuming he'd bought it when it was my money. I'd fix Dad's tax mistakes, stay up late balancing their budget, but they'd never mention it. I was their backup plan, not their daughter. The party had been my last attempt to fit in, and it showed me they'd never change. My phone buzzed, snapping me back. A bank alert flashed, a $500 withdrawal on our shared account labeled miscellaneous. My stomach twisted. That account was for household bills, things I'd covered for years. I logged in, heart racing. Another charge, $300, no details. I scrolled further, coffee shops I'd never visited, a gas station across town, a store I didn't shop at. Months of small, strange transactions, none mine. Dad had access. So did Scott. I'd trusted them, but after the party, that trust felt like a trap. I opened my laptop, pulling up bank statements. The numbers glared back, a puzzle I hadn't seen before. My hands shook as I traced the charges. Had Dad been dipping into the account to cover his debts? Was Scott using it for his flashy lifestyle? I didn't have proof, but the questions burned. I'd spent years keeping their lives together, and they'd been unraveling mine. That alert wasn't just a transaction, it was a wake-up call. I wasn't their safety net anymore. Whatever they were hiding, I'd dig it up, and they'd regret underestimating me. By noon, I checked my bank app. The alerts from yesterday had kept me up all night, those odd charges gnawing at me. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee forgotten, and dove into the shared accounts history. Line by line, I scanned the transactions, my pulse quickening. Then I saw it, a loan application dated 6 months ago for $50,000 approved under my name. My breath caught. I hadn't signed anything, hadn't even known about it. The account was tied to Dad, Scott, and me, but I'd never agreed to this. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, dread sinking in. Someone had forged my signature. I called the bank, my voice steady despite the panic. The representative confirmed it, a $50,000 loan payments overdue, my credit on the line. "You're listed as the primary borrower," she said, her tone clipped. I pressed her for details. The application had my social security number, my address information only Dad could access from our shared records. My mind flashed to his late-night calls about tight finances, always vague, always brushed off. Had he done this? Used my name to dig himself out of debt? I hung up my hands, cold, the truth settling like a weight. I didn't stop there. I logged into every shared account: car, insurance, electricity, internet, all the bills I'd been paying for years. One by one, I removed my name. I called each company, verified my identity, and cut the ties. The internet account was trickiest. Dad had set it up, but I'd been footing the bill. When I canceled it, the agent asked, "Are you sure this will disconnect the service?" I said yes, without hesitation. They'd figure it out. An hour later, my phone lit up with a text from Scott. "Wi-Fi's down. Fix it." No please. No context, just a demand, like I was still their errand girl. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I could have ignored it, but something snapped. "Not my problem anymore," I typed, hitting send before I could second guess. He didn't respond. I pictured him in his fancy apartment, probably thinking I'd cave like always. He was wrong. I went back to the bank statements, digging deeper. More charges caught my eye: $200 at a tech store, $150 at a bar, $400 for a car service. None were mine. The dates lined up with Scott's trips, his new gadgets, his nights out I'd seen splashed across social media. He'd been using the shared account like his personal piggy bank. I saved screenshots of every transaction, my jaw tight. Dad's loan was bad enough, but Scott's careless spending felt like a betrayal of its own. I called the bank again, this time to freeze the shared account. The representative walked me through the steps, warning it could trigger disputes. "Let them dispute it," I said. I wasn't backing down. By the time I hung up, the account was locked. No one could touch it. Not Dad, not Scott, not me. It felt like slamming a door shut. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I'd spent years covering their expenses, thinking it tied us together. Now I saw it for what it was: a leash. My phone buzzed again. Another bank alert, this one for a failed payment attempt on the frozen account. I didn't open it. Let them figure out their mess. Dad's forged loan, Scott's reckless spending, they'd built this trap, but I wasn't staying in it. I started drafting an email to a lawyer friend, laying out the loan details, the forged signature, the unauthorized charges. I wasn't sure what came next: legal action, confrontation, or both, but I was done being their scapegoat. They'd crossed a line, and I was drawing mine. 2 days later, another bank alert popped up. I was in my kitchen sorting through papers when my phone buzzed. The notification showed a charge on the old shared account: $2,300 at an electronics store. My heart sank. I'd frozen the account after finding Dad's forged loan, but somehow transactions were still slipping through. I opened my laptop, logged into the bank portal, and there it was: a purchase for a 4K TV, time-stamped yesterday, linked to a store Scott frequented. Another charge followed: $1,800 for airline tickets to Paris. My jaw tightened. Scott had been spending big, using money that wasn't his, while I was still untangling their mess. I dug deeper into the account history, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The TV wasn't a one-off. There were other charges: $600 for a designer jacket, $400 for a fancy dinner, all tied to Scott's flashy lifestyle. I cross-checked the dates with his social media. He'd posted a photo of a sleek new TV in his apartment, captioned "Living Large." Another post showed him at an airport, bragging about a European adventure. Every charge matched his boasts. He wasn't just careless, he was reckless, spending my money like it was pocket change. I couldn't stay silent. I opened my email and started typing, my words sharp but controlled. Dad, Mom, Scott. I began addressing all three. "I've found unauthorized charges on our shared account: $2,300 for a TV, $1,800 for plane tickets, and more. This stops now. If it continues, I'll pursue legal action for misuse of funds." I attached screenshots of the transactions, my evidence clear. I hit send, my pulse steady but fast. I wasn't bluffing. They needed to know I was done being their safety net. An hour later, my phone lit up with a notification. Scott had posted on social media a public jab. "Some people are so selfish, abandoning their family over a few bucks. Guess who's too good for us now?" The post didn't name me, but the dig was obvious. Comments piled up, his friends calling me ungrateful, a traitor. My stomach churned, but I didn't flinch. I took screenshots of the post, every comment, every like. If he wanted to play dirty, I'd be ready. His words weren't just cruel, they were a mistake. He was building my case for me. I opened a folder on my laptop labeling it Evidence. In went the bank screenshots, every charge, every date, every store. I added Scott's social media posts, his smug captions tying him to the purchases. I included my email to them, time-stamped, and the bank's confirmation of the frozen account. My lawyer friend had replied to my earlier message suggesting I document everything for a potential fraud claim. I followed her advice, organizing every detail. If they pushed me, I'd have a paper trail they couldn't ignore. I leaned back, staring at the screen. Scott's post was still gaining traction, his friends piling on with their insults. I could have responded, called him out, but I didn't. Let him dig his hole deeper. Dad and Mom hadn't replied to my email, typical. Their silence spoke louder than words. They'd always backed Scott even when he was wrong. This time, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't the quiet Caitlin who'd fix their problems and eat their slights. I called my lawyer friend again, laying out the new charges. That's enough for a case, she said, her voice calm but firm. Start with a cease and desist letter. If they don't stop, we escalate. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I spent the afternoon drafting the letter with her guidance detailing the unauthorized charges and the forged loan from Dad. Every word felt like a brick in a wall. I was building one to protect myself. I wasn't just fighting for my money, I was fighting for my life. By evening, my inbox had no replies from Dad, Mom, or Scott. I didn't expect any. They thought I'd back down like always. But I was already steps ahead, my evidence locked tight, my resolve sharper than ever. Scott's public stunt had only strengthened my case. That evening, a knock came at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated, peering through the peephole. Aunt Nancy stood there, her face drawn, holding a thick envelope. I opened the door, surprised she rarely visited without calling first. "Caitlin, we need to talk," she said, her voice low but urgent. I invited her in, my stomach tightening. Nancy was Mom's older sister, the one who always seemed to see through the family's facade. She sat at my kitchen table, sliding the envelope toward me. "You deserve to know the truth," she said, her eyes steady. I opened the envelope, my fingers brushing against a stack of papers. The top sheet was a letter dated last year from a tech company in Raleigh, a job offer addressed to me. My breath caught. It was for a senior analyst position, high salary, full benefits, the kind of role I'd dreamed of, but I'd never seen it. "Your dad and Scott intercepted it," Nancy said, her voice tight. "They didn't want you leaving their control." I flipped through the papers, emails between Dad and the company declining the offer on my behalf, claiming I wasn't interested. Scott's name appeared too, in a message urging Dad to keep her in line. My hands shook, the betrayal sinking in. Nancy leaned forward, her hands clasped. "Your grandmother saw this coming," she said. "She worried about how Thomas and Patricia favored Scott, how they sidelined you." I looked up, startled. Grandma had passed 2 years ago, but we'd been close. She'd always listened when no one else did. Nancy pulled another document from her bag, a copy of a will. "She left you something through her lawyer," she said. "Not money, but leverage. She wanted you to have a way out." The will mentioned a trust set aside for me, but it was tied up in legal disputes. Disputes Dad had never mentioned. Nancy's voice softened. "She knew you'd need to fight for yourself one day." I stared at the papers, my mind racing. Grandma had seen the unfairness I'd lived with, the way Dad and Mom put Scott's needs above mine. She'd tried to protect me, even after she was gone. Nancy slid a business card across the table, the name of Grandma's lawyer printed in neat letters. "Call her," she said. "She's expecting you. She can help you claim what's yours and hold them accountable." Nancy's eyes were fierce. "You're stronger than they think, Caitlin. Don't let them take that from you. After Nancy left, I sat with the documents, the weight of her words settling in. I dialed the lawyer's number, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. The lawyer, Ms. Harper, answered promptly, her tone professional, but warm. I explained everything: the forged loan from Dad, Scott's unauthorized purchases, the hidden job offer, the trust. She listened, asking sharp questions, then said, "You have a case. Send me everything you've got." I felt a spark of hope, the first in weeks. This wasn't just about money or a job, it was about taking back my life. I spent the next hours organizing my evidence. I pulled together the bank screenshots from the shared account: $2, $300 for Scott's TV, $1, $800 for his Paris tickets, and more. I added the email I'd sent to Dad, Mom, and Scott, warning them about legal action. I included Scott's social media post, his cruel words calling me selfish, along with the comments from his friends. Then I scanned Nancy's documents: the job offer, Dad's emails, the will. I labeled each file, saved them in a secure folder, and emailed them to Ms. Harper. Every click felt like a step toward justice. I leaned back, staring at my laptop. Nancy's visit had changed everything. Dad and Scott hadn't just taken my money, they'd tried to steal my future. The job offer could have been my ticket to independence, but they'd buried it. Grandma's trust was another lifeline they'd hidden. I thought of Mom, silent through it all, letting them call the shots. I wasn't angry anymore, just determined. They'd underestimated me for too long, but I was done being invisible. With Nancy's help and Ms. Harper's guidance, I was ready to fight. A week later, I walked into their house. My hands gripped a folder bulging with evidence, my steps steady despite the knot in my chest. The living room smelled of Mom's lavender candles, but the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Dad sat on the couch, flipping through a newspaper. Mom stood at the kitchen counter, stirring a pot. Scott lounged in an armchair, scrolling on his phone. They looked up as I entered, their faces a mix of surprise and unease. I didn't sit. I placed the folder on the coffee table, its weight making a dull thud. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. I opened the folder, spreading out the papers. Bank statements showed the $50,000 loan in my name, forged by Dad. Receipts detailed Scott's purchases: $2, $300 for a 4K TV, $1, $800 for Paris tickets. The job offer from the Raleigh tech company lay on top, Dad's email declining it, glaring in black ink. "You hid my future," I said, pointing to the letter. "You used my money, my name, my trust." Dad's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Mom's eyes darted away, her spoon pausing. Scott smirked, leaning back. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his tone dismissive. I didn't flinch. "This ends now," I said, my gaze moving from Dad to Mom to Scott. "I've documented everything, every charge, every lie. If you contact me, harass me, or touch my accounts again, I'll take this to court. Fraud, forgery, theft, it's all here." I tapped the folder, my voice steady. "I'm done with you. All of you." Mom gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Dad's face reddened, but he didn't speak. Scott laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You're cutting us off. Good luck surviving without us," he said. I met his eyes. "I already am," I replied, turning for the door. I drove home, my heart pounding but lighter. Their silence had said enough. They knew they were caught. Back in my quiet house, I called Ms. Harper, the lawyer Aunt Nancy had connected me with. I confronted them. I told her, explaining the meeting. She listened, then said, "Come to my office tomorrow. There's something you need to see." Her tone was gentle but serious. I agreed, my mind racing. What else could there be? I'd already uncovered so much, but Grandma's trust, mentioned by Nancy, still felt like a puzzle piece I hadn't placed. The next day, I sat across from Ms. Harper in her office, a small space lined with bookshelves. She handed me an envelope sealed with Grandma's familiar handwriting. "Your grandmother left this for you," she said, "and a savings account, $15,000 held in trust until you were ready." I opened the envelope, my fingers trembling. The letter inside was short, but heavy with love. Grandma wrote that she'd seen how Dad and Mom favored Scott, how they overlooked my strength. "You're more than they let you be," she wrote. "Live your life, Caitlin. Be fierce, be free." Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled. She'd believed in me when no one else did. Ms. Harper explained the trust. The $15,000 was mine, untouched by Dad's disputes. "Your grandmother made sure it was protected," she said. "You can access it now." I nodded, still clutching the letter. Grandma's words were a lifeline, a reminder I wasn't alone. I asked Ms. Harper to secure the funds and add them to my case file. "If they fight me, we'll use everything I said." She agreed, her pen moving quickly as she took notes. I left her office feeling stronger, Grandma's letter tucked into my bag like a shield. Back home, I reread the letter, tracing her words. Grandma had known the truth about my family, had seen the unfairness I'd fought to ignore. Her money wasn't just cash, it was her faith in me. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was the woman she'd hoped I'd become. Dad, Mom, and Scott could keep their lies, their control, their games. I had my evidence, my resolve, and now Grandma's blessing. I was ready to live on my terms no matter what they threw at me next. 3 weeks later, I stood in my new office. The space was small but bright, with a desk, a laptop, and a whiteboard covered in plans. I'd used Grandma's $15,000 trust to lease it, launching a nonprofit to help women escape financial abuse in families. The idea had sparked after my fight with Dad, Mom, and Scott. Years of their control had shown me how many others were trapped like I'd been. I named it Rise Free, a nod to Grandma's letter urging me to be fierce. My first client, a single mother, sat across from me, her story echoing mine. I listened, offered resources, and felt a purpose I'd never known. My days were full now, building something that mattered. I'd hired a small team, 2 counselors and a financial advisor, using the trust as seed money. We offered workshops on budgeting, legal aid for fraud, and support groups for women rebuilding their lives. Every email I answered, every plan I sketched, felt like a step toward the independence Grandma had wanted for me. My phone stayed quiet, no calls, no texts from Dad, Mom, or Scott. I'd blocked their numbers after the confrontation, choosing silence over their chaos. For the first time, I felt peace, like I was finally living for myself. I'd heard whispers about my family through old acquaintances. Dad and Mom had lost their house last week, unable to pay the $50,000 loan they'd forged in my name. The bank had foreclosed, and they'd moved into a cramped rental apartment across town. I didn't know the details, didn't want to. Their choices had caught up with them, just as mine had set me free. I pictured their old living room, once filled with Mom's candles, now empty. They'd built their life on taking from me, and now they were paying the price. Scott's troubles were louder. A mutual friend mentioned he was under investigation for misusing the shared account. The bank had flagged his purchases, lavish electronics, travel expenses, and now he faced credit restrictions. His social media, once full of boasts, had gone silent. I didn't check it myself. I didn't need to. His reckless spending, like Dad's loan, had unraveled without my money to prop it up. I felt no satisfaction, only relief. They couldn't touch me anymore. Rise Free grew steadily. I spent mornings meeting clients, afternoons planning outreach, and evenings studying nonprofit management. The work was hard, but grounding. I'd furnished my apartment with simple pieces, a couch, a table, a few plants, and it felt like home. I'd started running again, jogging through the park at dawn, the cool air clearing my mind. Grandma's words stayed with me. Be fierce, be free. I was both now, no longer the daughter who begged for scraps of approval. One evening, a client thanked me, tears in her eyes, for helping her escape a controlling family. I knotted my throat tight. Her story wasn't just hers, it was mine and countless others. I realized then how far I'd come. The party, the betrayal, the forged loan, they'd been heavy, but they'd led me here. I wasn't just surviving, I was building. My office walls held thank you notes from clients, each one a reminder that I was making a difference. I thought of Dad, Mom, and Scott sometimes, but not with anger. They'd tried to erase me to keep me small, but they'd failed. Their consequences were their own dad and mom in their rented apartment, Scott tangled in financial scrutiny. I didn't owe them my forgiveness or my time. Grandma had seen my strength when they hadn't, and her gift had given me a chance to prove it. I looked at the whiteboard scribbled with ideas for Rise Free's next steps and felt a quiet certainty. You don't owe your peace to those who try to erase you. That was the lesson I'd learned, the one I shared with every woman who walked through my door. I'd spent years trying to fit into a family that didn't see me, but now I stood in a space I'd built surrounded by purpose. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time, that was enough.